All right, I've enjoyed doing these piece compositions here using the mystic imagery and a couple of the new animal designs from the latest sets. 3 pieces in total here, all using kind of different paper and media combinations, using slightly different techniques, but some of them, kind of cross over in terms of the application of white pigment ink in all of them, just different sequencing. And I thought I would just do one more, and that's using a piece of dark cardstock here. It's a dark matte cardstock. This one happens to be like a deep navy blue. And I haven't done one of these in a little bit of time, and I thought, well, it might be time to employ those old techniques on this type of paper here. Again, just to kind of keep in practice, if you don't do certain techniques for a while, you don't lose it, but some of the kind of more nuanced little touches kind of get lost. Yeah, until you do it again, and it kind of starts coming back to you if you've done it enough times. All right, so this one here in a live stream, I put a big field of white pigment ink right in here, kind of in this whole section right here to block off a lot of this holographic cardstock, okay, just so that it becomes usable and we can see the imagery. The same thing has to apply on a piece of dark cardstock. If you stamp black impressions over the top of this, you're not going to be able to see anything. So we have to, utilize some light media on there in order for us to be able to see our imagery. Now, there's other types of techniques too, where you stamp imagery in white over darker cardstocks surfaces. And that's a really fun technique, but I wouldn't really apply something like that using this imagery, I don't think. I don't know. I guess maybe it could give you a kind of a wintry image if you do everything like that in white. But there's a lot of things going on, like little nuanced texturing and shading going on in here. And I want to be able to apply some of that on this paper. So we have to kind of lay down that white in the background and work that way. I'm going to leave this piece right here as a reference for me, just so I can see where I've applied some of the white on here. White Brilliance ink is a good one to use. You can use other types of inks, I believe, on this one too. If you want to use your oil-based pigment inks, your Hero Arts, Clair Snap types of pigment inks, it should work just fine. And then you would just stamp out your imagery probably in something like an oil-based pigment ink, like a VersaFine Clear, and that would be just fine. We can do that on this type of paper because it's just a matte type of cardstock. All right, so when you apply this, a lot of us haven't done this type of thing before, okay? So I always mention this in like every one of the videos that I do when I'm using this technique. This white pigment ink doesn't really, I mean, I guess it could go on smoothly if you're really, really careful about it. I am not that careful. I'm just kind of going for quick coverage. And then what I'll do is I'll kind of try to vary it and maybe blend it a little bit better. But with all these images stamped right over the top of it, you don't really, I find that I never have to get it like really super smooth. It's just not needed, just from the amount of overlapping and coverage that these pieces are going to get anyway. So what you have kind of going on in the background as far as the foundation goes, you know, I mean, you won't want it like just super haphazard, okay? But you can almost do it that way, depending on what you stamp over it. But I'm not worried about it, okay? And you shouldn't either. And if you kind of go through the process, you'll see why. All right. And I'm saying that because people get panicky a lot of times and they think, oh my God, it looks like horrible. I quit, And it's before they even get to like step 2 in the process. And I get it, it's just like a different type of look and people get kind of panicky based on I don't know, whatever happens kind of like in the early stages of a, several stage process, because they're just not used to seeing that type of that type of finish to their pieces, with other types of processes. You can kind of see what's going to happen along the way. You stamp something out and just start coloring it, and it looks like a kind of like a coloring book type of application of media, with especially with outline designs and coloring methodology. Okay, this one's more like, I don't know. It's like as if you had like a, some binoculars or something like that, and you just completely bring it out of focus, and then you slowly bring it into focus, like one little notch at a time. And that's kind of like what this process is right here. If I was to make a, whatever analogy. All right, but it is awfully fun to watch and witness the kind of evolution of a card this way. It just kind of starts to become in focus ever so slowly, and just a little bit at a time. Okay, so on this one right here, I'm kind of bringing in this ink right here. I'm trying to, I'll probably be utilizing some like this torn paper towel technique in here as well. Okay, let's see, I have some mountains up top here. Some of it I'm taking a little bit lighter than probably what I would want in certain areas, but I can use my colored pencil or pastel pencils to darken in some areas after I stamp them out on here. Okay, so you're not just only defining the light areas by putting light in here, but it's setting a foundation for it. Okay, so I might be using a glow-in-the-dark moon in here too. I'm not going to do this exactly like this. I think I'm going to have a woman down here with some glow-in-the-dark lanterns. And I think that might look pretty cool on this dark piece of paper, this cardstock here. So we'll test and see what that looks like. So it's kind of interesting, it's like usually we're adding in media onto a scene, onto a white piece of paper, and we're making everything darker as we go. But in something like this, it's like you're working opposite. You're introducing the light in here. And that's kind of a different process. It's almost like adding the reverse into, the scene. It's almost like you're kind of, I don't know the sensibility. It's almost like you're doing like sculpture or something like that, because forms become a little bit more apparent in certain angles, or at certain steps, I should say. So things like, it's almost like you're making something, kind of building something out a little bit more kind of dimensionally or something like that. I don't know. That's what I can think of in terms of the description. All right, so this kind of right here. So see, these mountains will be right here. Looks like I need to go up a little bit higher here. Okay, and there's these hills here. Is that up high enough? Yeah, it might be. I'm not just going right where the mountain is. I kind of want some of this in back of or higher than those mountains. Okay. Just that being said, it's so that it looks kind of like clouds above the mountains when it comes to this one. Okay, let's see here. Like that. And like I said, I'm going to bring in this little figure down here. So I'm going to make this a little bit lighter, a lot lighter. Right in this area. Like about like that. So she's going to be stamped down here. Kind of standing in the water. I want it to look kind of mysterious or mystical. So I'm kind of giving it a little bit of a, kind of, I call it spotlighting. It's like where this is like a stage, and we're kind of creating a spotlit area for our figure to kind of stand out. So I'm scrubbing or doing this to kind of get a little bit of coverage. Sometimes I'm going like this to get a little wispy kind of formation going in there. And sometimes I'm tapping like that to build up, more pigment ink on the surface. Because when you're kind of wiping it, you're kind of wiping, away some of the ink that's on the surface. Or you can do like the short kind of tap like this to get a little bit on there, but to give it a little bit of movement, okay? That's one of those things I tend to forget about. It's the touches, because it's like movements that we might not be using in other types of stamping a lot of times. 100% cotton ball. All right, now I don't know if that's going to be, this is brilliancing, so it has a little bit of shimmer to it. Not a huge amount, but a little bit more than just like white. The Brilliance ink, white especially, white and black for me is a really must ink to have in my collection. It opens up so many different possibilities. Like I said, on this one, you can use just about any type of pigment ink, white pigment ink, okay, because it's a matte. But you can also use the Brilliance on metallics, iridescents, those types of papers, printable vinyls. So it's just a more versatile pigment ink than an oil-based one. And it is designed to dry inks. It was meant to dry on glossy cardstock, which is a porous cardstock, but just not as porous as like a matte or semi-gloss. Okay, let me see. I'm going to ink up these and we'll get this stamped out here. I'm going to go for this composition like this. Okay, so I'll get one impression here, then I'll pause and just get the rest of this stamped out so we can proceed. These are the Mystic Tree stamp. This is the Mystic Tree's right. And let's see, I'll measure this off a little bit. Go about like so. Hopefully I've kind of re-inked this black pad. I'm going to need a pretty strong impression here. I think I did re-ink this fairly recently. It might have been better if I kind of heat set this white ink a little bit. I don't know. It was reasonably dry because it's a matte, so it's really, the moisture is really absorbing into the surface pretty quickly. And when I say fast drying, you can really maneuver it around. It's not drying like super fast. It's a fast drying ink in relation or in comparison to like an oil-based, pigment ink. Okay, hey, that's nice and dark right there. So no problem. Let me see, I'll ink this one up about 2/3 of the way. And we'll just go for right here. Maybe I'll just continue shooting this video without pausing. Okay, let's see. This goes about right here. Now, once I get these images stamped out here, I might do some extra white now that I know where my imagery is. Because it's hard to tell on here when you're just kind of laying down that white ink. I mean, I have this model to go off of. But, until you get the imagery down on there. And each one of these different compositions, I mean, the imagery just, comes out slightly different in terms of placement. Because, I mean, I guess it could be very accurate if I really cared about that, but I don't, if it's off a 1/4 inch or something like that, 1/2 inch, I'm not going to really care about that too much. Okay, let's see. Like I said, I might use the glow-in-the-dark moon in here. So I'm just leaving space for it right up top. Now this is a pretty dark scene here, so being that I'm stamping it on the navy paper, so a lot of times I would kind of wipe off the bottom of this and stamp it out where it's a little bit lighter against my trees, but I'm not really bothering on this one. And again, just because it's, just a darker scenario to begin with, so. And I'm doing this, is this the 4th version of this composition? If you do a composition, I mean, I don't do this very often, where I'm like doing like several versions of the same thing. But if you really like a composition, it's like, hey, that really came out nicely. And you have all your certain stamps out already. It's just really easy to try it on a different piece of paper. This is the ledge right here. Previously, those were the Mystic Mountains large. But yeah, it's just really easy just to grab a different piece of paper or the same type of paper. You do your scene in a different color scheme this time. It's fun to do. But it's really nice to just kind of do it again, just convenience-wise, just because you already have all the stamps out. Okay, looks like that. And let's get those extra textures down. One of my favorite things to do here is to lay down a lot of texture in here with my Tiny Rocks Small. And I'm doing it at the base of my rock formations, the Mystic Tree imagery. About like that. Lay down some of it right down in here too, giving it more of kind of a shallow water type of feel. All right, that is the foundation. It took me about 20 minutes. This is a half-page card here. So, you know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow this to dry, and then we'll come back in and we'll kind of model all of our forms a little bit more. We'll add some shadows and highlights in here. And then we will go from there. So some of these areas on here, some of these trees, I don't know if you can see, but they're a little bit darker and kind of still shiny with that ink. And I want all those things to dry on here before I start applying more tones. And plus, when it's dry, you can see how dark everything is, or, you know, dark or light they are, so that you can apply additional shading and light accordingly. Okay, we've given this a few minutes to dry, and everything's reasonably dry on here. A lot of it, the drying takes place with evaporation, but also absorption into this paper right here. But as the white dries, it gets fairly dark on here. Now, you're getting some of that reflective quality from the white brilliance, but a lot of it is fairly dark in here, so we don't have a lot of contrast working. It looks more like this without the lighting on it. But even so, it still looks fairly dark, even with that reflective quality on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to bring out some lighter areas on here with the use of a white pastel pencil. Then I have a black Prismacolor pencil. And I also have some black charcoal pencil here. Here's an old Conte crayon of mine. I think that should do the trick. It looks like I need to sharpen up my pastel pencil a little bit, so I'll go do that. Okay, so when I'm working on other types of papers and we're coloring in certain things, there's kind of an area of darkness, no matter what type of paper that I've been using. So you can see these areas within the scene, tops of rocks, sides of mountains, and there's this mist in the background, but that might be better achieved with some additional brilliance ink right here, but really specific areas. Maybe I should add in my moon there so you can see what I'm referencing easier in terms of my lighting on my forms. Right now it's just kind of, I'm doing it with the intention of adding in a light source here, but just kind of adding in this highlighting in here. Now, I'm usually doing it with a this type of thing with an acrylic paint pen. But on this matte paper, I want to take advantage of being able to use soft applications of pastel, or I don't know. I haven't really tried a white colored pencil on this paper, but I think that would work pretty well. But see that lightness like that? And maybe I'll do a moon in here, and I'll see if that fits right in here. And we'll take a look at that. All right, here's my glow-in-the-dark printable vinyl sticker paper with one of my moons stamped on it and cut out. Now we have our reference point in terms of lightness, so we can see how kind of light you can make, or we can make the mountain here. The lighter the light source, the lighter the reflected light off of our objects we can be, or objects in areas, I should say. So I added on things like that. Here's another mountain right here. You can kind of barely see it right here, but I'll kind of bring that out on the side of the mountain, kind of facing the moon, like that. I'm kind of going with this downward stroke here. This is a real elongated composition here, portrait style. So I'm kind of just going with that. I don't know. I don't know if I'll go with that through the whole thing, but it seems to be kind of like within the theme of the composition right here. I don't really like that. That looks a little bit awkward there. So what I'll do is I'll dab some of that off and just make it a little bit lighter like that. One of the things that you can really easily do with pastels, so you see that, it looks a little bit better. It looks a little bit more natural. All right, now we have that, and let's go and add some of this to the tops of these rocks in here. I can just add a really light application of it too, for now. And if it's too light, you can just, like, we just remove some of it, or we can darken it up with we can darken it with you know, some of the black pastel and get a little bit of a different type of tone, maybe a gray or something like that. Yeah, and everything starts kind of coming out of the background a little bit with these highlights like this. Down here in the water too, you know, we need a little bit more kind of form in there. There's a lot of kind of undefined areas within here too, so we'll add some tone to that. And what I'm also kind of needing to do on here is we need to kind of work in layers, I think, on this one. And what we'll do is we'll add, we'll seal off what we've applied on here with a spray fixative. And then we'll work some additional highlights and tones on here accordingly. It just, you know, we need a little bit more contrast in here. You can see what black looks like in here, but all the other blacks in here that we've used are more of like gray tones, okay? 80% gray or something like that, which don't stand out enough over the top of, I don't know, this like 75% dark, you know, I don't know, maybe it's like a 90% gray or something like that over the top of like a 80% dark surface like that. So there's only like 10% contrast between this and this darkest of the paper in here. So we need to extend the contrast in here. Okay, trying to pull out the trees out of the background a little bit with some additional highlighting on them. All right, I think we'll go and we'll spray seal this a little bit. We'll get some of these tones locked in, then we'll add in some extra shading. Some of that looks like a little bit maybe too light. When you spray seal this, though, a lot of this gets a little bit darker, including that white pastel work. Okay, we have this spray sealed here with a Krylon workable fixative. Now, one of the things that I don't have in here that exists on my previous 3 pieces is that the each layer, foreground, midground, and background, the midground and background have this kind of layer of clouds at the base. And that's what kind of makes these kind of Chinese ink painting types of things kind of a little bit more mystical. There's this separation between these spaces in here, and I have a little bit of the cloud in front of this one. This one not so much, just because I wanted a little bit of contrast between here and there. But we need that base, that kind of that negative space in between our objects in this one. I think it's going to be really important in this one. It's important in all of them, but what we'll do is we'll take a torn paper towel here. Let's see. We always got to find the kind of the grain and go against the grain with these torn paper towel clouds in here. And we'll add some clouds at the base of our mountains in the background, and then give this a little bit more of a I don't know. I think it's more of a like a full type of appearance in here. So when I start adding this down like this, ooh, that's a lot of ink. What I do is I try to add a lot more of this ink towards the top of this, and then I kind of taper it off. Let me wipe some of that off right there. Okay. Let's see, let's go like this. I had a big blob of paint on this. Maybe I should switch cotton balls. This one's getting a little bit hard with use. Kind of the second usage of this I always find to be the best. And then it kind of starts getting a little bit too hard. Okay, now if you notice, I'm kind of moving around my, in the sense this becomes a template for our clouds, but I kind of move it around as I'm doing this so that the cloud becomes a little bit more kind of moving and fluid. And I think a little bit more natural looking than just to keep it in one spot, okay? And have, having a really hard edge to it. See right here, here's where that mountain starts. I'll try to put a little bit of a cloud behind there too, so that the mountain looks like it's kind of sandwiched a little bit in between the cloud, or the cloud is enveloping it. So like that, I put a little bit right there, and then the mountain goes down into the cloud, and the cloud's kind of coming around this way now. And you can kind of build your cloud. Again, it's kind of like, I don't know, ink sculpting. It's all two-dimensional, but it kind of feels like you're kind of building something when you're working this way. And then you see I move this down here to make the cloud seem a little bit more dimensional. Like that. So it's like there's 3 layers of the cloud like that. And see, the forms are starting to become a little bit more distinct, I think, too. They kind of disappear into the background, without those clouds there. And I think that looks pretty good. So I think we'll put some right in front of this one as well. Let's see, I'll go for a little bit of a... A little bit of cloud like that right there. Let me see, I'm going to make this a little bit more narrow here. I'm trying to find a good angle to work in right here. Something like that, and we'll put a little bit of tone right behind it as well, maybe. Then I'll freehand some in there as well, like that. I think that cloud is looking pretty important right in here, so I'm going to extend it a little bit. I'll just add it really a light version right here. And then if I like it, or I decide it needs a little bit more, then I'll add more accordingly. Okay, yeah, that kind of brings that out a little bit more. I don't know, it kind of buries it too, but kind of defines it a little bit more. And let's see here. Let's go ahead. I want to bring this one out a little bit more. So in order to, kind of bring something, in order to make something look darker, we can make it physically darker, but you can also bring in something that's lighter next to it. And by contrast, it'll make it look, or kind of appear, lighter by contrast. Okay, so we will try that. We'll probably do both. We'll add a little bit more tone. Let's see that little cloud right back in there. And then I'll block out some of that rock right there. Maybe bring a little bit more tone right behind that. And maybe it'll look like the moon is illuminating some mist or clouds right behind there, like so. I like this little passage of clouds through here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to illuminate that passage a little bit more, kind of in between those mountains. Like this. All right, see that lighting coming through there like that. down in here. Or maybe right over here, maybe a little bit of this misty illumination. Or should I leave that? Maybe I'll leave that a little bit darker in there. Kind of hard to tell. It's looking better though, I think. You know, it's kind of the forms are starting to kind of define themselves a little bit more. Or I don't know. I guess maybe it's like the character of the piece is starting to take shape. You know, we have all these stamp designs in here, but it's like almost like the clouds are more of the kind of the main feature now. It's certainly kind of setting the mood for the piece. Yeah, that's what's really fun, kind of working on, you know, dark cardstock like this in white. All right, see that little cloud right in there, and I think let's do this. Let's kind of lighten up some area right in here. I still have my little figure that I'm thinking about stamping in here. I think she'll kind of look interesting. I mean, we could do the horse again, but I want to make this one seem a little bit more kind of mystical. That, and let me get our figure and see if how that will look in here. All right, I think I found the figure that I want. I think about her, but instead of having her down in the water like I was originally going to have, I think she fits right here really well. And then I thought I would put a couple lanterns down here, like floating lanterns. But if I'm going to put her right there, I think I want a little bit of a lighter kind of backdrop for her with these clouds. So I'll add a little bit more pigment ink right in here, white pigment ink. And we're adding in that pigment ink because we want her to stand out. It doesn't have to be prominently, but enough. Because after all, she's going to be a, you know, a decent focal point within this piece. And I think let's go ahead and add a little bit of that mist right here in the foreground, I think. I don't know if you notice, but I keep wiping away. I keep adding too much. I think this is like too thick of a cotton thing, so I'm pinching it off to make a little bit more of a narrow application of it. cloud sculpting a little bit. Wow. That is quite a passage there of tone. All right, so we've added in a lot of tone in there. And is it time for her? I need to be careful. With their arms are being raised, don't put way too much pressure around in those points. Otherwise, her hands will kind of get squashed. So pressure towards the base of the figure. Like that. See, her hand even got a little squash there. Let me see again. It's because this ink is really thick too. Here we go. Yeah, there we go. That's what we want. We want these nice hands, not like a clubbed hand like that. Okay. So that. Like that. I'm holding down for a little bit longer because I'm stamping on top of a lot of thick white pigment ink on there too, so that, have our figure like that in the moonlight. Praise of the moon, you know, or something like that. She looks quite a bit darker in there because she's really wet right now. All right, now I'm going to take some of this black. Should I try the? I'm not sure what's softer. This is a Conte crayon black pen. That might be a little bit hard. I think my Prismacolor black is softer, so let's try that in here. I'm going to kind of anchor her down a little bit more, making some of these rocks a little bit darker. The Prismacolor will probably make some of these rocks a little bit darker than what they stamped out in, okay? And I can just kind of define some of these rocks a little bit more. We'll leave it mostly gray, but just for some of these forms, I think just a little bit more definition. Yeah, it's a little bit darker like that. I think that'll look good. It's just a kind of a texture contrast. Okay, kind of redefining some of the. Normally, I'm kind of adding some of this darkness to some of my. White to some of my leaves to make them varied in tone, but coming over it like that and just kind of making them crisp again against all that soft white, I think it's a good idea. And see, like this down here. I mean, I don't want to work around those leaves. So I just went right over the top of them. So I'm just kind of going in and just, redefining them a little bit. Just because this whole scene is really soft, so I want to add some crisp elements right back in there like that. Okay. And on some of my tree trunks, on the side of the trunk, opposite from the light, I'll make those sides of those trunks a little bit darker. All right, now up in the those mountains right up there, I'll add a little tone like this. So on the lighter areas, we added that light white into those areas, and right over here, I can add a little bit of shading to it, like the opposite side of the the mountain, just like little areas. I mean, you can do a larger area too, but yeah, I'll keep it largely as, and I'll just define some of those forms a little bit more. See, like right up here, it's monotone. Okay, mono value, I guess. So we'll darken that in like that. So we just get a little bit more variation and contrast. And so it's a little bit darker over here, a little bit less dark, and then just a little bit right in here. And then you got that mountain kind of standing out a little bit more. See, it's just a little bit darker over here, and then I added a little bit less black, and then even less right over here. A little bit of shading at the base of this rock right in here. And some extra tone and shading on our foreground rock right in here. You almost can't even see it because it's a fairly delicate image just made of tone, but more condensed tone in the darker areas. So you just go in here and reiterate that shading scheme within the rocks like this. All right, and you get this kind of rock formation showing up a little bit better. All right, it's just more defined like that. Okay, so we're kind of creating a little bit of shading over here. Kind of going over some of my white down here, just making that a little bit darker. All right. Seems pretty decent. Now, I might add in some extra little touches in here, those kind of glowing lanterns or something like that. Kind of if there's a place for it, I'm not sure. It might just be going in here and adding in some highlights, though, with the, I don't know, other pens, or maybe I need to introduce more lighting in here, too. Maybe with the pastel pencil, like something like that. You know, just to capture that lighting a little bit more. Then maybe that's almost too much. It really stands out like that. That's a little bit better. Maybe just a little tweak of it. Kind of a brighter light in some of these areas like that might be kind of nice. Might be able to, yeah. So I can go in, I can kind of like add that, I don't know, whatever, silvery, silver lined cloud type of thing. Like with that too, we can put a little bit of highlight on tops of some of these clouds. Which can make them look a little bit more kind of defined. I'm finding this doesn't work in some of these areas here. Some of it does apply in some of these areas, and some of it doesn't apply at all. Oh, right here, I'm actually kind of removing some of my my ink. I think it's okay. I think in some of these areas I have it locked down with the spray fixative, and some of these areas are not. Let me try something too. Here's some blue. Light blue. Yeah, or kind of a medium blue. Maybe I can kind of define some of these clouds a little bit more in here too. Just with some blue. Yeah, that bluish tinge like that, it kind of makes those clouds glow a little bit, I guess. So we're kind of coloring our white pigment ink in some cases, like that. It is darkening those clouds too a little bit, so I'm just kind of applying it very lightly here and there. Yeah, you can see that little bluish tinge, so it's introducing another color into it. Let's try the this really light blue. It's kind of a warm blue that I really like. A little bit of this extra bluish tinge in there, I think. All right, I think I might need to spray seal this again before I do some additional work, just to lock down some of these additional marks with our pastel pencil. All right, we have spray sealed. This probably for the last time. I think that's the last of the pastel pencil that I'll be using on here. And I think it's time for some white paint pen. I just took a peek at a couple of my old pieces on dark blue cardstock, and it's like, okay, I did use quite a bit of the white paint pen on there. So everything on here it has a kind of a soft look to it. So this is the thing that really adds, you know, a bit of a crisp element or touch into the scene. And I was wondering if this was going to be a little bit too much, but I think it really needs it, just for the kind of a balance, a textural balance to the scene, to the card. Just all these techniques on here. It's a very soft look. First of all, because the imagery is the imagery is stamping crisp, but you just can't see it very well because it's a dark impression over a dark piece of paper. Even in areas where I've placed white pigmenting, stamping into it, it's just not like a super black impression. So, it's more of that grayscale. So I just think it really needs it, just to kind of bring out, like I said, it's like a textural balance in the piece. So I'm going to be I'll use this white, somewhat sparingly at first. It really stands out anywhere I've kind of added it here. Because that you can see just, even though there's a lot of white used, it's not like stark white. It's, the areas where I've used white, you get a lot of that dark paper showing through still. So you can see just how, what white really looks like over the top of this. But yeah, it's starting to it's starting to kind of bringing it to life a little bit. I'm kind of adding it in areas where it's the lightest right now. All right, so it's got like those little kind of touches in there. I might need to bring a little bit more white into it, though. This white really stands out against the background, so I might just kind of decrease the contrast between these white dots and the background, just with a touch more of a pigment ink, applied probably with like a Q-tip. Kind of smeared those dots right there a little bit, but it kind of looks okay. I don't know, maybe not. Okay, let's try this right here. Oops, not black. All right. I think that is. It's almost like a stairway up to the moon or something like that. Now, what I have to kind of consider here is, that's a glow in the dark moon, and I think these lanterns might look kind of cool down below. I think I would do them in a blue tone to kind of match the blue. Um, of the page here, so I'm thinking about these ones. I have these ones right here, but these ones might be a little bit large. I can go with a larger one, a couple of smaller ones right in here. And I think that might be kind of interesting. So I might stamp them out here to get kind of the basic structure of where I want these lanterns to be. Then we'll just cut them out and place them right down there. I'll probably add a little. Oh yeah, what I do is I usually add a little bit of that texture with the tiny rocks small around them though first, and then paste them down. So let's see, we'll figure that out here. Okay, I've stamped out my layout roughly where I want those lanterns to be. I can't have them too close, otherwise we're saying that there's going to be like a 4-foot tall lantern or something like that. So you stamp them lower in the composition. I think I'll have another one right here and here, but that'll be my basic structuring right in here. And again, we'll be using the glow-in-the-dark vinyl for these. So I'm going to put a little bit of this kind of foundation around these, just because I think it looks better with the, I don't know, just a little bit of texture around where we place these. And like I said, maybe another one right here and right over here. I'll just be putting like an individual one, like in a couple of these spots. But I don't know, I think it'll make it a little bit more whimsical looking with these. And it'll give, an extra glowing element down here for the moonlight. All right. And what I did was I have some of these already cut out here. I don't have too many blue ones. I'll have to create some additional blue ones in here. But we'll use a couple of the ones that I already have here. Oh boy. And I have this little scratch knife here, which is really good for applying some of these or placement. I could just kind of aim it like that, but sometimes it's easier for me to put it on a little tool here if I can get it to stick like this, and I can kind of more surgically add that into place like that. And I think that little glowing lights, yeah, that's really going to bring this area to life down here. So what I'll need to do is I've pre-stamped a lot of these like this, and what I'll do is I'll go in here and cut these out. I need a couple more of these blue ones, but simple cutting out process just out of the vinyl. This is really just easy vinyl to cut. And okay, so I don't need the reflection portion of this. Some people ask me about cutting these out, and it's really easy. because most of these are just, it's like a rectangle shape. So I'm just going like this. On this one right here, there was this one little dip, but then you just go like that. It's mostly just straight cuts. This. Okay. Now this bottom portion, you just cut right along here. It doesn't have to be perfect because there's this big black area. And you have this right here. Let me see, I have a couple little spots that I didn't get real good. I'll just cut those out like so. This is a sticker, so I don't know. As kids, we all like doing stickers, and I'm finding that as an adult, if it's stamping and glow-in-the-dark stickers, it's still pretty fun to do. So go like this. And you can see I stamped out the larger one right here. These ones are a little bit smaller right there. And I'll just apply that like that. And see, that lower portion is already in the impression down here, so I don't need to, like I said, you don't need to cut those areas out, so it makes for a really easy cut right there. All right, I'll cut these out right here, and I'll do that off camera, and then I'll color a couple more of these in. And the way that I do this is just with some alcohol pens like this, and I just kind of go like this on here. Looks like that was a different color of pen there. I'll bring in a little bit of this greenish tinge. It looks like a little bit more of a greenish blue or something like that. And I'm leaving that little area down there to kind of glow, okay? And we'll just cut these out right here. All right, let's start applying some of these. I've cut apart some of these lanterns so that they're not, some of them have like 3 on the design, but I've just separated since we're doing them as, these vinyl ones, vinyl stickers, and you can kind of separate them. So in other words, I have like clusters of 3 and 2 on the design itself, but just to vary them a little bit more, I've separated them. Like these 2 are attached, but I've just separated them here. And that run right there so I can make it like a lot smaller and put it in the background. Sometimes the hardest thing is doing these things is getting the little tiny sticker paper separated. This one's really tiny here. I'm kind of putting on this so I can kind of move it around and see what looks good to my eye. I think good enough. All right, so we have this kind of moon warship scenario, maybe. And I don't know if I'll put the piece in here, that little quote stamp. This is like a dark piece of paper, so it'd really stand out in there. Although it'd look kind of cool up here if I was able to stamp it in white right in here, that would be kind of cool. In reverse text style. I think I could probably stamp it in there. And if I don't like it, I think I could wipe it off because I've really sealed this in quite a bit. This is on a piece of gold cardstock right here. That was kind of interesting. And then if I mount this with a little bit of gold around the perimeter, it might look good. Huh. That is really bold like that. And this would be like this, just in white, like that. Might be better not having it quite so prominent. If I stamp this in white, it's not going to be super white. Let's give it a shot right here. We'll try to allow this to transfer. Don't put too much pressure on it, otherwise you'll kind of be squeezing the ink out from underneath the stamp at around on the perimeter. So you just adequate pressure, even pressure, and a little bit of a prolonged transfer stamping of it. Like that. I think it looks pretty decent there. Like I said, I've spray sealed this enough to where I think, if I didn't like it, I can just wipe it off probably if I act, quickly enough. But that will dry, again, a little bit darker than what it appears like right now. So let's see, let's get this formatted up here. Let me see something here. So we see these little, this is what I really can't do when I'm just stamping this on certain types of papers. I can't really get this glow as if there was like a glowing reflection down in the water, but maybe I can get a little bit of a glow with a little bit of a pastel pencil on dark like this. I think that looks pretty cool like that. I'm usually putting kind of a shaded color underneath these. But it might look kind of neat with a little bit of this reflected light in the water. Something like that. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Looks like they're kind of reflecting a little bit. Okay, now that my figure, she's not very dark anymore, so after I stamped her out, so we'll introduce a little bit more value, darkness into her. Maybe she'll be a little bit lighter up top, but let me make her dress a little bit darker. Like that. It gives it a little bit more contrast against that soft, cloudy background like that too. However, kind of casting a shadow into the that area right there. A little bit more contrast on this mountainside right here. All right, I think that is just about it. Besides a little bit of formatting. Some of these little white dots really stand out a little bit extreme. Maybe we can cut down the contrast a little bit with those as well. So we're cutting the contrast by just making the area that they're on a little bit lighter, or a lot lighter in some cases. Yeah, that's a little bit better. All right, let's get this spray sealed one more time after that. This has to dry up here. And then I'll get this formatted onto a piece of paper, or double mat probably. And we'll take a look and see what this looks like. All right. We have our finished piece here, shown in the light like this. I think it looks pretty decent in terms of our rendering of forms and things like that. It took a little bit of, coaxing to get this out of here, and had no idea what this piece was going to look like. Even midway through, I think this area in here became kind of the prominent feature in here. In this area right down here, it was kind of unresolved, but I think the lanterns really kind of helped that area out. And let's take a look at it in the, I don't know, whatever the special feature of this piece, being the glow in the dark. All right. Now this is not what it looks like here. I always have to adjust my camera because we're in quite a bit of darkness right here. But it kind of looks roughly like that in person. This paper right here is probably compensating for a lot of light in here. Let me get that out of here. Like that. Okay. And that's about it right there. So you can see the lantern's kind of glowing a little bit more. It's much more of a greenish glow in person, but I don't know. I think you get a pretty decent representation of what this kind of looks like in this lighting situation here. So pretty fun stuff. And I don't know, it's a good exercise to work for me in this format at times. It, certainly gets me to look at and to think about light and shade kind of in the extreme. Because you're starting off with a darker form, so you're kind of having to bring out the lights, and then you push it back with a little bit more darkness in certain areas. You can do this with a lot of different types of, colored papers that we're working on. Instead of if you're someone that's always kind of used to working with like a white piece of paper, it's a really good exercise. And then when you go into a white piece of paper, I think what it does is it trains us to see lighting a little bit more if you've worked through this type of exercise before, because we're not just adding things into a white piece of paper, making them darker and darker, or coloring. You're having to really think more things like negative space a little bit more. So it's a really good training, even for me, who's done something like this a lot of times. If I don't do it for a while, I kind of have to relearn it a little bit and to get back in the flow of it. And like I said, I had no idea what this piece was going to look like. You know, much throughout much of the process here, and only until I started kind of tinkering around with, more lighting on those clouds. And, it's, I don't know. You really have to kind of manipulate things a little bit and work it a little bit and just kind of let your eye be the judge of it. If you want to add or, darker areas or lighter areas again, you can keep doing that on here. It's a kind of like a circular process instead of like a linear process, A to B or A to whatever, N or something like that. You can wrap it back around and go back to your lights and things like that, or add it lighter, too light, then you make it darker again, add light back into it, and just till you get it to where you want it to be. It's like playing around with a two-dimensional, I don't know, Play-Doh or something like that. You can keep manipulating things and kind of changing the textures and things like that. So it's fun stuff. It's a fun way to work once in a while, and to use it as an exercise too. You can do it in small portions too, like even this little piece right up here. This like a scene like this. A really small one. I think that would make a really great card, just like that up there. You know, or something like that, or even just this little form like this little figure. I don't know. I'd probably just put something around her, but I think that would look really cool too. Okay, anyways, if you've sat through this and you've managed to stay till the end, thanks so much for watching. Hope you like the card and the entire kind of technique and process and the look of it. If you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section.